you very much. So first of all, I'd like to invite Sunny Lau to speak on behalf of the Hong Kong IA, the steering committee for this exhibition. So just thank you very much, Sunny.
Thank you, Roger. So on behalf of the steering committee of the 25th anniversary of the Hong Kong SAR establishment, is representing the HKIA Urbanism and Architecture Exhibition for Excellence. This Beyond Territories comes back to Hong Kong. So after a series of great exhibitions around the world in New York, in Hangzhou, in Beijing, finally, homecoming session. This is the dialogue one. I greatly appreciate the great work of all the members and also of the curatorial team. They have been pulling a lot of great efforts across different boundaries, geographical boundaries, and also professional boundaries. So I greatly congrats all of the work has been done overseas. And on behalf of the steering committee, I welcome you all at the exhibition of the homecoming here tonight with this dialogue one. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sunny. Sunny has two roles today. I mean, she's also one of our speakers. So, but before she speaks, I'd like to invite Joyce. Joyce to, well, thank you very much for letting us have this wonderful space and also the exhibition space as well. So I'll pass the mic on to you, Joyce.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming and welcome to Asia Society. I'm sure it's all been said before, but it needs to be said again that we are so thankful that this exhibition has come together and that it's happening and that we can present it to the members of the Hong Kong public, who I think are in sore need of public education in terms of architecture and how it infiltrates everyday life beyond buildings. It's not just about constructing, it's about that thought that goes into it, the mode of living, how you can make living better, really, from the design of maybe a pair of scissors to how smooth the lift journey is going up your building. All that has factored human imagination into it. And the work of Asia Society is to bridge these gaps, to connect people with industry insiders, and also to provide a public platform for interesting ideas to bring them to life. And so I know what a journey it has been to gather everything. And heartfelt thanks go to the HKIA's curatorial team, you know, Stanley, Roger, Bernard, and also everyone behind the scenes who have spent a year laboring to manage to get this off the ground. And I think even though today is the day of No More Leave Home Safe App, it wasn't so long ago that it was really touch and go, you know, during the fifth wave, and you know there were tears and sweat over this. And so it's a great point of pride, I think, for all involved that we can see the work of everyone in the gallery now at Asia Society, hopefully streamed live to everyone once the VR is in place. And it will live on as a time and space and period where we all came together and exchanged ideas. So I hope you all enjoy your evening today and learn something from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Thank you. Yeah, we thank you for lovely space for us for our exhibition. For those of you who haven't been to see it, because normally it closes at 6 o'clock, but because very generously, because we've got the talk tonight and then it will open till 9 o'clock. So if you want to, after the exhibition, after the talk, you want to go and have a quick look, please feel free. And what a lovely place surrounded by nice people as well as books to have this kind of talk. So the talk title Beyond Geographic Territories, in fact, was a talk that we first did in New York when we were in New York. So this is homecoming back in Hong Kong. And the idea is that we want to talk about, invite people who have worked in different territories, not just geographically, but also beyond the kind of architecture, sort of a boundary, architectural territories. Somebody just said to me, are these handpicked? They are kind of handpicked speakers, because the one in New York, we actually had obviously the Hong Kong IA representatives, but we also had the AIA New York representative there, the president, and also AIA Hong Kong chapter's president was there speaking as well. And we actually invited the RIBA USA chapter chair speaking. So the idea is that here today, we also want to, in response, have the same, where people who are involved, actively involved in the Institute, speaking in the first session. And then in the second session, I think people were probably not so active involved, but they have, I think, a lot of things to say, aspirations of what the Institute should be doing in the next 25 years, maybe. So I think hopefully at the end of the session, we would have some visions from the people getting involved, as well as aspirations from the people who want the people involved to kind of make a drive as we move forward. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Sunny back onto the stage to give the first presentation. Now, Sunny, for those of you who know, it's, well, she's sort of been involved with the Hong Kong IA for quite some time, but also she does this thing called the MIT Innovation Hub, which sounds very, very exciting. And I think she's going to tell us a little bit more about what she does beyond territories, beyond the architectural kind of norm. Thank you. Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. So I'm very grateful to be talking at this across boundary, across profession as a topic, because after I've been practicing as an architect in Hong Kong, I feel like I have been doing things that are can't explain in a one-liner to all the professionals around me. So yep, I have been since 2018. I've been working with the MIT Hong Kong Innovation Node, which is based in Hong Kong, but our home base is in Massachusetts, Cambridge, MIT, the school, and it is also my alma mater. And I have been very happy to embark that journey with a lot of different professions at the MIT Innovation Node. That includes engineers, also different sorts of students, and also different Hong Kong researchers as well. I think there is something connection issues. So currently, I've been directing the head of Smart City research and industry collaborations. And the Smart City initiative starts when I joined it, and working on different projects, mainly on Kowloon East, inclusive innovation and growth, and also recently with the Design for Sustainability Urban Mobility workshop, etc. So the node has been crossing different arena, bringing the MIT to Hong Kong as well as Hong Kong to MIT. So we leverage the MIT community and the Hong Kong-based alumni, and also provide different kinds of opportunities, especially focus on entrepreneurship and innovation. And recently, I had the Smart City Initiative looking into the urbanism and urban design and planning, and fills into topics like sustainability, cultural preservation, and even art tech. So regarding urban tech pedagogy, from MIT point of view, we always look into minds and hands. So in 2021, I brought in a cohort of more than 20 students from Hong Kong and MIT, hybrid version, because the pandemic has begun, and work with Professor Brent Ryan from the School of Architecture and Planning, and bring them to Kowloon East. And we look into different aspects of the project of the Hong Kong area called the Kai Tak and also Kowloon East. So you can see that there's the topics revolve around architecture, urbanism, smart tech, and also how do we deal with urban activation through technology. And we have brought in the student cohort in different aspects of professionals such as city planning, urban design, real estate, art and media. And then the second year, we even brought to a bigger spectrum called and work with MIT Media Lab City Science Group called the Beyond Smart City, and look into Island South as a project base of a context. So again, we leverage the industry that is interested in such topics such as Tramplus and also Zuni and Cyberport, all this community. So we want the students go beyond their profession and to get a glimpse of how startups could help them bringing innovation into their daily design activities. So because the time today is just 5 minutes, so what I'm trying to emphasize is how we enrich the cohort by injecting different backgrounds of students, even from master to PhD to undergrad and engineers, etc. And here is a glimpse of students' project. In 2 weeks, they are able to achieve and understand the context of Hong Kong and create a very interesting projects, regardless it's an NFT project or AR, VR, revitalization of urban places, or even a food delivery service, utilize a gamified interface from the cell phone. So these are things that crossing boundaries and crossing profession from a student perspective could enrich our thinking. And we can see there's 2 workshops of the 2 year, and we have multiplied the stakeholder engagement, etc. So yeah, to end quickly, our engagement also reach out to communities to provide different contexts, a platform for professionals to communicate with each other and to enrich their thinking on different topics with interactive workshops and exercise. So here are some prototyping ideation workshop that has been done at the Node. And we are looking into the future planning. We will work with an accelerator directly called the MIT Design X in the coming 2023 to bring in another cohort during the summer. So we welcome all the professionals to come in and be our mentors and inject your innovative ideas to groom our talent of the future. So this, I will leave it to our discussion panel to talk about how we can further enrich the profession from this one perspective from this one institute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Yeah, we restricted to speak to the talks for 5 minutes because I think we've carved out a long time, 25 minutes for discussion, and I think the points that are going to be raised will be we can discuss further in a session. So thank you very much, Sunny. And next up we have Yimei Chen. Yimei, well, she has a number of roles here, and I think she's got at least one exhibit that you're involved with in the exhibition. And so you are a speaker tonight, and you also, well, here in co-founder and design director at LOD, but she's also the next AIA Hong Kong chapter president. Thank you, Yimei. So tell us all about your work, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger, for the introduction. So I'm Yimei Chen, co-founder and design principal for LOD, and also the president-elect for 2023 AIA Hong Kong. So I'd like to have a very quick intro of my own practice, which is a cross-discipline, cross-boundary, cross-time zone operation based on concept design emotions to enhance users' design experience. So our office is worldwide and also with mainland China collaboration. And before COVID, I actually used to commute to Shenzhen and China every day for work. So beyond traditional architectural practice, we also do things like branding, product design, interactive design research, and so on and so forth. And we use user analysis personas approach to integrate into something we call user journey mapping, to create emotional experience design that ultimately we want to map it into our spatial modules. So this is an approach that we have used and applied to all our projects. In 2021 Venice Biennale, we also participate and have an exhibit called Quantified Community. The idea is to use big data to integrate into a spatial design so that we can quantify our space and make it a smart space. The overall vision is that we want to build less for a better environment. So this could be we hope that this could be achieved by having using big data. Oops. Oh, how? Not working. Okay. Oops. Okay, so thanks to Roger's introduction, in the M3 exhibition, we also have an exhibit called Community Interweave Shenzhen. So it's in the annex, so hopefully you guys can visit. This exhibit have with half a year of research into the Shenzhen neighborhood, and we want to use the communities, local communities perspective to bring out the idea and the spirits of Hong Kong. And it would have multimedia output and also virtual reality experience. And the other hat that I'm wearing is AIA Hong Kong chapters Exco's role. So we also have an exhibit called Experience Hong Kong in the M3 exhibition. And in this exhibition, we have featured landmark projects that have been designed by AIA members in the past 25 years. We post it on social media and encourage members and non-members to comment and also share their stories. So it has been a very successful campaign for us and also turned into a very good exhibition as part of M3. So for 2023, our vision statement is Shape the Future. And in our chapter's strategic direction report from 2021 to 2025, we have stated that we want to shape the future by encouraging design of responsive buildings, livable cities that enrich lives and sustain the environment. So this year marks our 25th anniversary celebration. We have also invited our past presidents for the past 25 years to give comments on what they think would be a message to our members and also the future of architecture in Hong Kong. Inspirational quotes and meaningful responses have been collected, including persevere, innovate, and educate. We can shape the better environment, design and build a better Hong Kong, and how to create an environmentally resilient, socially responsible, and culturally responsive as a future of architecture. Always be positive, be resilient, make tomorrow better, and to create a walkable, livable, affordable, sustainable, and resilient city to make a difference in people's lives. All this encompass knowledge, passion, and direction for how our future city and architecture lies. So in our 2023 visions, we also have 4 initiatives. First is about future of community. We want to strengthen our own network, and by working with professional institutes like HKIA and RIBA to build a more cross-discipline collaboration platform for our profession. To create future city, which means that we would like to expand not only the future of, we would also like to look beyond the future of Hong Kong, but also the Greater Bay Area, which has been a theme for 2022. And in 2023, we will look further beyond into Asia, Southeast Asia region. And then we want to encourage the cities and our reach to influence the other parts of the world. The future of environment, we will be looking in build continuously our effort to build a more sustainable environment, to to continue our effort on the recycling effort and advocate on sustainability. In 2023, we will have a new committee called COTE that will focus on the different areas to create a better environment. Architecture 2030 is always something AIA advocates, and also is our FAIA's funding project. So these will be programs that we'll look into for sustainability. To shape the new possible, as well as my own practice, and also Eric is going to cover, is how we can incorporate new technology, alternative practice into the profession to look beyond our future and the great horizon. So hopefully we can all together build a better environment in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for that. Was just hot off the press. The past president's comments, wasn't it? It was. Did you had an event on Monday? Yeah. So thank you very much for getting all of that on the screen. Thank you, Yimei. So the next speaker we have Dennis Ho. Dennis has been involved with the RIBA Hong Kong chapter for 3 years now. 3 years, and hopefully I'd like you to hope you continue, because elections coming up, I hear, next year. So I hope you'll be continue to be involved. And Dennis is a East Asia region design lead and East Asia urban innovation unit lead in Arab. And I think when I met you, you were in a kind of a former environment. But anyway, Dennis is going to tell us about both his work as well as your thoughts on the future.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. And hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Ho. Maybe I talk a little bit about my background. Could be interesting. I was a trained architect in the UK, but I've done a lot of urban design projects. So I kind of call myself an architect, urban designer, city strategist. And I think this is the point about what I was going to talk about, is really the roles of architects really these days are really changing a lot. After training in the UK, I went to work for Richard Rogers for a long time. So, you know, working in different cities, countries, with lots of different kind of engineers, is from day one after my training, it became the norm. So I started working on a lot of projects in Europe, and then moved across to the US, and then back to Asia. So at that time, I thought, well, actually, I wanted to focus more in East Asia, and that's why I moved back to Hong Kong a few years ago. So after I moved back to Hong Kong, I actually worked at Hassel as a design principal. So again, it's a very international firm. So I worked on a lot of international projects. And then 2 years ago, I was approached by Arab, and they said, okay, we wanted to do more architecture. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting, because it's an engineering firm, or known more as an engineering firm. But I thought it's actually a very, very interesting idea that how architects actually work within an engineering firm that can actually utilize all the expertise that they have to create something that is quite unique, I hope. So that's kind of my mission in a way, from the board, is actually to see, you know, what we can do with our internal expertise and create something different. Now, so I put a few lines together, really just kind of summarize some of the thoughts that I've had. And I'm saying that we are living in a very complex and unpredictable and transformative period because of COVID, or the changes in the culture and the technology, etc. But myself as an architect and an urban thinker, you know, I think we are constantly looking beyond our own discipline to look for aspiration. You know, when I design a building, I don't necessarily look at the design from an architectural point of view. Maybe I'll be looking at it from a landscape designer point of view, or from an interior design point of view. So I think those things are really important. So once you've started to think in that direction, you really will have the initiative to go and engage with a lot more other disciplines in your project. So I'm saying to my team all the time, you know, I think the days when an architect just sit in a room and do a sketch and give it to an engineer and say, can you help me to make it stand up? You know, I think those days are gone, right? So we don't really have those architects anymore, I hope. The other thing is also about visualizing the future, because I also said, you know, the future cannot create itself. We need to create our future. So to visualize our future, we really would need to work with many, many other disciplines to create this future, right? And at the same time, there are a lot of current technologies that we can take advantage of. But at the same time, I think our roles is also to help the consultants and expertise to understand what we need in the future, to help them to advance some of the innovations that they're looking at. So, with these kind of three strands of thoughts, I thought, Arup was actually a very good place for me to develop some of my thinking. I actually don't have many slides, so I only have 3 more slides, so 1 slide per minute. But these 3 slides actually, I wanted to capture 3 very different kind of projects at 3 very different scales: the city scale, and also a neighborhood scale and a community scale. So I don't know if some of you may know, Arup, a lot of the profit that Arup makes actually go into research and development. So it's actually a very good system. So I think we are lucky enough to have received a lot of funding, global funding from Invest in Arup, which is a global funding for staff who wanted to do research and development projects. So in this instance, I've always wanted to do something with Victoria Harbour, because I kind of feel that Victoria Harbour used to be a postcard destination. It looks beautiful on the postcards, but you can't really get to it. And when you get to it, there's not much you can do about it. But of course, it's been changing a lot recently. I understand that a lot of things have been happening along the Victoria Harbour. But still, we want to approach it from a multidisciplinary point of view to understand how we can bring nature back, how we can increase connectivity across the harbour, but also increase connectivity within the city as well. But also bringing, bringing people along the perimeter of the harbour front, but also actively engaging with it. So in that sense, we've actually engaged with a lot of our internal expertise, not only in Hong Kong, in East Asia, but also globally around the world as well, because we have expertise on the marine engineering, on the ecosystem of waterfront. So during this kind of 3 to 4 months exercise that we used to develop this idea, we actually have been engaging with a lot of different consultants on the project. I don't have a lot of the other slides that actually talk a lot about the technical aspects and the environmental aspects and the human aspects of the project, but we have shown the project to different places. So it was quite a successful study for us. The second project is actually a commercial office tower. And this was a competition that we won, organized by the Hong Kong Green Building Council, supported by Swire. And what's really interesting is we submitted a scheme. Actually, when the jury picked the winner, they said, we actually didn't know that Arup can do architecture like this. So I was kind of quite interested in the comment. So actually what happened was we wanted to enter this competition, but at the same time, we want this to be an all Arup submission. So we actually get consultants from within the region, but also our international consultants on the project as well. So there are a lot of future technologies that we try to incorporate into this. For example, like transparent curved PV. We have algae walls that are 200-meter tall to produce biodiesel with compost as a byproduct, which can be used to nurture the vegetation. And we have tested the use of natural ventilation in the offices, wind turbines at the rooftop, many different things. But I guess my point about this is, without working with the engineers closely from day one, the building would not look like this, right? So this is an outcome of how we want to address the issue of the context, not only the context in terms of the scale, the color, the people, but also in terms of the climate, but also in terms of what technologies our consultants are foreseeing in the future that we can use to shape the building. So the outcome has been very interesting. So we have a lot of people interested in the project, and we've been talking about it a lot. And also we've been talking with different universities about prototyping some of the facade systems as well. So this is another interesting project. So the scale going from the city to the neighborhood. Sorry, go back to this one. Okay, so this is the final project I want to talk about. So this is another very different scale. So as an architect, I think we're very interested in working from very big scale to very small scale, but maybe we are still trying to address the same issue of how to create social spaces within a city, whether it's very big social spaces or very small social spaces. So in this instance, a client came to us and said, well, I had a designer who came up with a bridge, but we don't really like it. Can you come up with something quite different? So I said, yeah, why not? But why do we design it as a bridge? It's an open space floating above a road. So we work with our engineers to develop this kind of a circular prefab modularized system as a series of elements could either be water features, resting area, it's kind of landscape spaces. So it's very kind of interchangeable. But when you link them together, it becomes something quite interesting and exciting, right? So again, without working with our engineers, we probably would not have come across interesting technologies and also the solutions to create something like that. So again, this project has been very interesting. Unfortunately, all the 3 projects that I'm talking about, not sure when they're going to be built. Hopefully, at some point, some of the elements will be built. But I guess my summary is to say, we want to work with our global expertise. We want to work with different kind of disciplines in order to create something that is much more exciting and interesting, especially for the future when we have to address all these different kind of social issues, the transformation of technologies, availability of new kind of materials, and how do we deal with the human aspects of our future cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Manfred. Manfred Yun. It's Manfred is Manfred. Manfred had also been involved with our IBA Hong Kong chapter a little while ago, and more recently, he spent a lot of time in the Greater Bay Area. So he's probably going to give us a perspective which is quite topical, and also from the perspective of somebody who's actually worked in Hong Kong, also from a background from the UK and so on. And I think, but I've heard he's going to talk very fast because he has 40 slides and he has 5 minutes. So let's have it. Thank you. Thank you.
So my topic is something beyond the territory of Hong Kong. We are going to move back to China. It's a project that is not our project, is something that I've initiated. It's called 平凡计划, a normal initiative. So what is it? It's a charity that I've started with Bai Xiaobai, Jason. He's a media guru. So he owns an online magazine, and he asked me to join his campaign to renovate 8 schools in China. So we started one, and I thought it should not be just me. So I grabbed another 2 very brilliant architects, Xiang Daiqing and Lang Mei from Cube Architect, one of the largest and best local architects in Shenzhen, to join the team. So 5 of us, we have started this journey in Guangxi. We have, and we understand a few issues. First, there is a real problem with 留守儿童. So there's a real problem with kids in the village, but they are not poor. I mean, they're not starving, but they are quite deprived from care from the parents and their working parents in the cities. So that also means that they will be spending more time on their cell phones. They will be not spending more time on like real knowledge that they should be having. Okay, so okay, so they were also coming to schools like this, that they were great. They were spaces, but a lot of the real important spaces like a library are now underused. So it's not really interesting right now. And also the teachers who are teaching there, let's say 200 students will have 5 teachers, 205 teachers, and 3 will be made up by the police force. So they will have to join the schools for a period of time, but usually they can't teach histories and art. They are all military people, so they can only teach PE and mathematics. So they were, this is the place they're living. is not really good, and they were forced to take showers and cook in these places. So it's not a really welcoming place for anyone other than the military and the police to participate in these places. And I went there myself with Xiaobai. Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So, but still, okay. And they were lacking canteens, so the schools doesn't felt that they need to be eating on a formal ground. So they are not learning about tables, manners, and etiquette. They will be standing, will be squatting, and they are not being educated apart from the school formal educations. And they need to carry water all the way up to the hill. And this place is, I forgot to tell you where that this is. It's in Guangxi. It's in Sanjiang. It's a village called, is a tribe called Dongzhu. Dongzhu. So they were, so I spent 6 months there, and his cousin, which is part of the police force, spent 1 year there. So why are we doing this? Why are we starting a foundation? Well, I believe that architecture can save people, right? Can change people's lives. We were envisioning that perhaps these spaces can really not only uplift the function of the space, but the emotion of the space, right? The schools are not only there for physical and functions, right? They are all there for more than this is an apparatus for education. So the spatial improvement for physical needs, for connection, for spiritual needs, and for the future. So we hope that some of the kids can learn about STEAM education so that it will be part of effective workers and even designers for the future, right? And maybe they can join the MIT lab in the future. So this is the 8 schools we're doing. And I just want to let you know, I just want to jump to the end because I only got 1 minute and this thing is really taking me 3 minutes. So I think I deserve a few more minutes, Roger. Yeah, well, what I did, and that's the twist in the whole thing, is instead of doing it myself, I invited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 10 other designers, top interior designers and architects in Shenzhen and Shanghai and Beijing and Chengdu. Really, really some of the best people there. And 4 of us from Hong Kong. You got Gao Xiaohong from Ganao Go, right? And Frankie, you some of you met him, and. We were all there for, we took one part of the building or one part of one school, and yeah, we start doing this. So this is just let you know what we have been doing. This is the calculation of the area and money that we need. Xiu Hong did the logo for us, so it's great. It's world class, really. Usually one of those logos would cost you $1 million Hong Kong dollar, but it's free. We did that out of the recycled wood with 2 libraries, as we felt is important. And Holei did a library as well. Tian Xiao did a psychological healing center. Dongzi, various associates. If you read Design Magazine, you see his work all the time. Did a STEAM room for a workshop. Yo-Yo did a music room. Frankie did a corridor with landscape that connects 2 parts of the building. Wang Chao did a canteen, and they were really paying attention to the money. Guozhe did a canteen as well. Zhengong did a accommodation for the teachers. So we're very focused. We're not building new things, but we are really determined to help the school on hiring better teachers and giving the students what really need. So we started in the 2021 in September, and we really need your funding. Thank you. Like this, but it's not going to work. You don't have WeChat. So you can give it to me.
Thank you. Yes, what a sales pitch. Thank you very much. Now we've heard all four speakers from our first session. So what we'll do is that we'll rearrange the furniture a little bit, and then yeah, we'll rearrange the furniture a little bit, and then I'll invite Joyce to come on stage again with me. She will be our respondent to ask a few cutting questions to all these speakers and start off our discussion. Thank you very much.
Hello, so make sure I have a view of everyone. Thanks for all of your mini presentations, which were all very well received and so enlightening, given the different avenues in which each of you are sort of approaching your practice and making inroads into different realms in the architectural world. And so I think we're going to start off with a question for Manfred, given you the last speaker to stand here. And it's really great that you're doing good, you know, small changes to better lives. And I think the question here is, how do you think places of gathering have changed, given the need to gather physically has changed so much in a post-COVID era, and also given the worlds that digital devices provide? And that is really probably a direct hit at what you might be trying to do, which is to improve the physical surroundings. So any thoughts on that, Manfred?
You're spot on. I felt that we as architects are putting physical things still, right? And a lot of the work will have a ripple effect. A lot of what we do will entail some other donations like TVs. And the TV will encourage Zoom meetings and off boundary teaching, beyond territories teaching. And that teaching will also be influencing the material of the reading material that the students will receive, and their life will change, right? So it's not with architecture. It will never end with architecture. And we architects can only start with architecture. So imagine if I'm a Tang Xin, right? Tang Shen, they will start with the digital peripherals, and then it might end with architecture. As a matter of fact, this is what happened. So I can fill you in with what happened. The project started when Meidec, they donated some air conditioning. Yeah, air conditioners, right? And Xiaobai, who was serving as a teacher there, a volunteer teacher, thought that, I am a media guru. They donated stuff. Of course, they want some in return, so they publicized it, right? So other people were saying, he was thinking, well, why can't I ask more suppliers and commercial giants to be involved in this? So they need more action. They need more visible sparks. That's architecture. That is space. So that's how they got us involved. You probably, if some of you know who knows my work, we do a lot of acupuncture work on this community and in schools and in the city. So just in short, I just felt that can start anywhere. But what we are creating is a loop. Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of you have talked about today, right?
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manfred. So maybe not so ping fan after all. And
Hopefully.
yeah. So Sunny, given your work in innovation and research and basically running a lab for creative minds, what I could see in terms of education and what we're trying to give to the next generation or for ourselves, really, there seems to be a bit of a predicament where we are self-contradictory. And by that, I mean, given we are living in a digital age where children are digital natives, and those are terms and jargon that are commonly thrown around. But what we really mean is when we are all spending so much time on our phones and laptops and screens, that is inevitable. And yet we're trying to encourage people to live in the actual world, in the actual physical surroundings. But then at the same time, so much creative genius is being poured into the gamification of learning. So what do you want someone to do? Do you want them to be present, or do you want them to play your games?
Well, that's a brilliant question. I haven't thought of that, but as a teenager back then, I was already fascinated by the parallel world, which is the gaming world. So I think it's just a matter of fact, we have to be aware that it's a kind of tool to explore play as a learning method. There's different ways of individuals to engage in learning. So at the node is almost explorative. We encourage we have a flexible space with everything is movable. And also we have a maker space. So students can use that space to learn. It could be a lecture, seminar setup, or it can be workshop based of a project group based. So we encourage minds to exchange via technologies. Because of the pandemic, it kind of created a barrier, physical barrier. So MIT students has to stay on screen, but we were the very first places that offer hybrid learning. So we adopt Zoom. Because we're such a small team, we're engaged the student, use all sort of low cost live streaming, YouTube to showcase their pitching through the available medias. So I think just to be cautious that we're using these tools at our best capacity, but we're not dictated by the tools, then I think it's fine for next generation or even us to encourage that parallel of universe.
Thank you so much, Sunny. And Yimei, towards your background and your time spent in the Greater Bay Area and the daily commuting, which you mentioned between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, those were the days. But it would be interesting to hear from your perspective, linked to what Sunny was saying about what you see and feel sort of on the ground there, where I think the mainland Chinese community were far quicker to pick up on digital systems and moving their lives online, much more so than Hong Kong, I'd have to admit, I'd say. And given that, and given learning, so much learning is picked up, by osmosis, simply because your friend sent you a link or an app or something like that. Sort of, what do you think about the points reward system in terms of learning? So the games and the gamification, and because that informs our receptiveness to new ideas, that informs how likely I'm going to take your advice in the future based on what knowledge I've learned from these methods of learning. So, any perspectives on that?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I have been living in China starting 2007. in Beijing.
Mm.
When I first lived there, that's the pre-Olympics time, we always said it that way. I used to have to spend a day at the bank in order to open my bank account. And if I have to pay my utility bills, I have to go to the management office in person, and I have to settle the bills one by one manually, and that would take me half a day. Okay, so looking back from 2007 to when we have all this new technology and the change with the internet, with WeChat, this wave, even pre-COVID, it has changed the behaviors of the people in mainland China. Everything cashless. And one story I always like to tell is that you would be able to buy a $1 dumplings even with the phone. And I stopped carrying cash already, I don't know, like 7-8 years back then. So going back to like why COVID, during the COVID time, how come the mainland Chinese have been able to pick up so quickly? It's because the technology already deeply integrated into people's lives. So it's a change of mentality. And that's something that ultimately, I think all the other countries will pick up, and that you can see in terms of generation, even beyond millennials, we're talking about Gen Z right now, and even my daughters, that are Gen Alpha. And going back to how Sunny responds to the question about online, offline learning and how hybrid learning, I'm amazed at how kids picked up, how the teachers picked up so quickly during this time. And that is inevitable that we will have to adapt to the change.
Great, thank you, Yimei. And I'd like to tag on to that brilliant phrase you mentioned earlier about building less in the years going ahead. And I'm going to pin that on Dennis, actually, who didn't say anything about that at all, but I'm going to test your R&D capabilities, given Arab's not infinite, but seemingly infinite funds. So what is your take on that? You know, building less, that must be counterintuitive. And that seems to be a recurring theme in today's panel, is that we're trying to push forward, but at the same time, situation seems not against us, but there is this constant push and pull, online, offline, then dreaming, don't dream, practicality versus, you know, you're building a bridge that doesn't have to be bridge shaped. So with this sort of feeling of counterintuitiveness, sort of how do you make things happen? And I mentioned this in terms of building less. And are we building less simply because there will be fewer humans alive? Or are we building less because we really think we'll benefit from it? Any thoughts on that, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think statistically, or according to some interesting facts, that probably going to be a lot more people living in our cities in the next 20, 30 years. And also some other scary statistics that talks about, we are going to have to build one New York City or Manhattan once every month. That's a very scary statistics, right? So, but on the other hand, I think a lot of cities are evolving. So we don't necessarily need to rebuild all the time. So building less is definitely something that everyone should be looking at. But I think more important, it's not really just about building less. It's really about how to reuse a lot of the resources that we have right now, because our lifestyles are changing. So the way that we live in the future are going to be very different. You talk about digitalization. The way we live, the way we work are really changing very fast. Now, I think to a certain extent, it's also culturally related. Yeah, but in 20, 30 years time, I think we can foresee the very, very different way the cities will be working. The future mobility, future way of working. We might want to be traveling around the world constantly because we don't need to be in one place at the same time, right? And we also want to be working with many different kind of disciplines and many different expertise from around the world. So we're talking about beyond territories, right? So how do you work across different territories using modern technology? And how do you kind of visualize things being done without actually physically doing it? So another debate that I've had with recently is, can you actually in the future be designing a building on your iPhone or on your phone, So you actually don't need to be in an office to design a building, right? So, not only building less, but maybe the effort of designing is becoming more and more convenient. Now, that might also be quite a scary thing, because people tend to just design things off the cuff, and the considerations are a lot less. So I think this kind of future virtual world help you to visualize something that is quite unique, different, dynamic, exciting. But at the same time, I think we have to be very careful. We really need to seriously consider the social aspects, the human aspects, and some of the more kind of tangible feeling about what we want to build as a city. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for your insights. And that social aspect is something that the curatorial team at HKIA have focused on for our exhibition, which is currently in the gallery. And what really touches me are the exhibits by the Housing Authority and the Housing Society. And what we are feeling very much now in Hong Kong is the aging demographic. And that is global, but we feel it more so perhaps in Hong Kong because we live so closely together. And a lot of the times the focus is on the young, the youth, Generation Alpha, because they're cute and they're cuddly. But I think aging and aging gracefully is something that probably deserves more of a spotlight. And given your work in the Innovation Lab, Sunny, I wondered whether there might be any future focus on that.
I'm glad you asked, because actually we did have this topic called the Health Hackathon annually. So it's run by our team, colleagues, and we have engaged the MIT Solve. It's called a call for a global challenge from teams globally that put forth different innovative solutions. Either it's a startup or either it's a university team that going to be doing startups. They will address the social impactful solutions at different contexts. So at the note, we have a group of students that work, a cohort that work on the topic of active aging. And so one student cohort is established successfully after the hackathon. They established their company and got an incubation program at Science Park and Cyberport. They call I don't know, maybe I don't speak of the company name, but they designed their ideas was to design a fall detection jade bracelet. So
I'd buy that.
Yeah, for you to
add some fairy dust into it.
Yes, exactly. So they had the IoT sensors and automatic call capacity. So if you fall within the premise, your remote relatives can come and give you a call or save you in time, that golden time period.
Yeah, well, very meaningful. Thanks, Sunny. And kind of thinking to societies and how humans congregate and get together. I mean, this is very much an architecture exhibition focused on urbanism, city centers. And that brought me to the train of thought about moving capitals. Now, this has happened in the history of China many times over. Saigon, Peking, and back and forth Chongqing at a certain time. And of course, now it's happening in Indonesia. And given AIA's coverage over Southeast Asia, as you just mentioned, Yimei, will we be involved in that somehow? It is, of course, of great importance to any nation where they position themselves literally in terms of where their capital is, where their base is. And being in Southeast Asia and us being part of Asia, is there any chance that Hong Kong architects could pitch in and provide their expertise to this?
Absolutely. In fact, a couple of our core member firms that they have been actively involved in this operation that you mentioned, but also the rest of Asia, including countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Bangkok, Korea, that we are also in touch with. So I think there would be a big push in terms of the Asia economy's growth and development, and especially on Southeast Asia aspects. And that right now, that's why we are looking into developing more collaborations with our members across, because we have been having networking resources into this Asia region. So our firms have been, not my own firms, but our members' firms have been involved in from the infrastructure planning, and also looking into the sustainability aspects of these projects. And that to carry forward, we are also looking into how we can bring back some of the knowledge of how we practice in these countries that actually have building codes that are different than Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And maybe there would be lessons that
Yes.
we can learn from each other and can make a change also in Hong Kong's local professional market.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yimei. And I hope these sharing sessions do continue, and that both AIA and HKIA are able to facilitate that in the years to come. Yeah, and RMB, of course. How could I forget? How could I forget? Because I think what was crystallizing here is that you never know what you learn may come in useful someday. So there never has to be like a specific project or the dreaded project brief to have to focus our energies. I think just this cross, beyond territories, learning and synergy and kind of learning from each other must continue. And we forget, it's so easy to forget because we've all been in our COVID bubble.
Yes, and also I believe a lot of us have talked about how our works actually have beyond territories and cross the boundaries, cross country, because there are things that are made possible in other cities and other countries that is not possible here right now, maybe because there are some obstacles, but it's not because that they're not possible. So to be able to work in an innovative way and to find new ways to collaborate, new ways to redefine the problems. And I think that could bring a better future for Hong Kong.
Thanks so much. And Roger.
I've been making copious notes. I mean, I think this is great. One thing, it's just an observation. It's not maybe a question.
Yeah.
There's a conspicuously absent word in this discussion is architecture, which is exactly what I want to do, because it is beyond territories. I mean, I think in a way we are talking about architecture, of course, but we don't have to talk. Or to quote a quote, the greatest trick the devil's ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. If we can do architecture without talking about architecture, we would have done it. I think the idea of building less and doing more, I think that is absolutely the key. I mean, I'm not trying to talk myself out of my profession, but the idea of building less to do more. I mean, less. I mean, I don't want to kind of hackney that term too much.
But isn't that what the best kind of architecture is? Like the best kind of design is subliminal. You're living it and you don't even notice how it's so good, right? So it might be the elephant in the room that we're not saying the word architecture, but I think it's because it's already there. And that's why this is so interesting. And how are we doing for time?
I think we should give the others their 5 minutes. I think this. I mean, I think the first session has been great. I mean, I think we can sit here and talk all night, but I think we can after the second session.
Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Shall we rearrange the furniture a little bit again? So that was a great first session. So the second session, we have 4 speakers in the same format. And while we are rearranging the furniture, I would like to, our first speaker is Chow Lok Kan. he's I mean, yeah, he's one of our exhibitors, and he's had throughout the exhibition, Charlotte actually came to New York as well, so he's been great in helping us. He even set up some of the lightings when we were there, so he's been great, and he's been giving us a lot of feedback in terms of our exhibition and also our program. So I won't keep you to anymore. So let's hear it from Charlotte. Thank you. We just I think we're a bit faster than yeah. Thank you.
多謝 M3，我咪攞唔到。
Just say next.
Thank you. OK， 多謝 M3 團隊邀請啦。咁今日講建築實踐未來嘅，我個人認為嘅4個趨勢。咁啊 ，next slide。呢幾年大家成日都講社區參與係咪啊？社區參與分兩種，一種係參與式設計，其實係一個諮詢過程啦。咁個問題其實係邊個做決定啫嚇咁啊。另外一種係參與式建築。咁我好中意嘅其中一個例子就係next slide，就係 movable chairs。可以搬得喐嘅凳，你望下佢下邊啲凳咧，其實全部係搬得喐嘅。咁你中意圍圈坐啦，你中意自己一個人坐啦嚇。就你中意挨住棵樹坐啦，隨你中意。咁 what is interesting about it is 你搬完張凳之後咧，你係即刻有得坐嘅，你可以即刻享受到個勞動成果。咁呢個我哋稱為參與式建造。可以提升到用戶嘅話語權啦，同埋歸屬感。咁落實到喺建築上邊咧，其實其中一個方向咧就係 next slide， 就係預製件。你幻想一下將來可能你買樓花嘅時候咧，你好似張 menu 咁樣有得揀嘅，有得 customize 嘅，甚至乎可能好似 IKEA 咁樣要自己砌嘅。技術上你要有一個叫 dimensional coordination， 即係話你有個 grid 你係垂直打橫咧係可以上下打沓嘅，咁先做到。咁喺建築嘅語言上面點樣表達呢種意象咧 ？Next slide 就係你個核心結構要標準化先至提供到多元化。當然呢個係一個建築語言啦，但我哋覺得亦都係一個嘅趨勢嚇，就係話next slide 其中一個技術上邊你模塊化係有機會成為社區參與嘅一個終極延伸。OK，next slide 趨勢2，互聯網 5G 雲端技術普及，令到大家可以 work from home 係咪？我哋話今時今日你仲朝9晚5，你請唔到人㗎啦咁樣。所以數字化對於建築嚟講，投影同埋電腦 mon 多咗。next slide 你嗰個嘅投影啦，電腦 mon 多咗嘅時候，你越嚟越多沉浸式嘅體驗係嘛？燈光控制越嚟越緊要。咁係咪代表可以足不出戶咧？又唔一定係喎。人類始終有步行嘅需求。Next slide 你要出去行下。呢件事係生物遺傳嚟嘅，即係話人類有探索空間嘅本能需求，日日坐喺度諗唔到 design 係咪？所以一個 walkable city 係非常之緊要嘅。Next 而呢個步行咧唔係淨係話縮短距離咁簡單，唔係話天橋隧道嗰啲嘅 forced circulation， 而係有一個free navigation 嘅公共空間，你係可以行到嘅，有路線選擇，有 choice of circulation 嘅。Next 譬如話，亦都有冇一個空間之外嘅再發現啦，一個 space beyond sight， 有冇一個 rewarding experience？ 有冇提供一個next sense of enclosure 啦，我哋話一個公共空間啊，到底佢係 concave 定係 convex 啊？一個建築物係一件 object 咧，抑或係一個嘅ambience 咧？咁即係呢個就係趨勢2啦。我哋話喺數碼年代，步行探索違和感，似乎都仍然係一個需求。Next， 好，趨勢3，circular economy、carbon neutrality 呢啲咧就一定要做嘅。不過我哋個問題就話未來真正消耗能源嘅，好可能唔係建築，而係一啲數字化嘅嘢，譬如話雲端計算啦、人工智能啦，仲有你部 server 要 cool down 啦嚇。所以碳中和靠嘅係 next 新能源同埋可控核聚變。咁有啲人問啦，哇咁人同自然個關係係點啊？人工同自然其實冇分別嘅。Next 雀仔識得起雀巢，海狸識得起水壩係咪啊？築造其實係動物本能，人工係 second nature to first nature。問題嚟啦，咁點解仲要保護大自然咧 ？Next 首先係安全問題啦嚇，因為洪災、水浸風險、海平面會上升，咁石屎兜咧唔係萬能嘅，所以你都要做翻啲生態設計，有雨水花園、海綿城市等等。Next 再者就係生態地景，佢有一個存在哲學意義係咪？點解咁多人中意睇芒草，咁中意睇風景？點解荒蕪之地會令人聯想到生死意外、時間嘅流逝咧 ？Next 點解咁多人中意影廢墟咧？係咪？點解 biophilia 會同 mindful 有關咧？好多時有呢啲嘅大自然嘅奧秘，其實好多都係未知嘅。We don't know what we don't know。所以 next 趨勢3生態保育就係我個人認為嚇，唔淨係碳中和或者憐憫咁簡單，其實係佢 is much more than that。Next 啱啱講到 自然啦嚇，建築嘅未來嘅功能 next 能夠對住日出日落、潮漲潮退，呢個係好多人夢寐以求嘅嚇。你幻想一下，如果有得叉電、有 WiFi、有廁所，其實係可以喺郊野公園翻工嘅，係咪？咁鄉村化又會唔會大規模發生咧？又唔一定會喎，因為就算上網做嘢，咁你都要訂貨、要物流 next。所以我哋就話啦，高密度城市嘅優勢其實係個物流高效，呢個先至係真正重要。呢個係分散式嘅鄉村係做唔到嘅。另一方面咧，就算係 work from home 咁，都要開會，都要轉環境，有張 Carol Desk 係咪？其實 campus 咧，我哋覺得係圖書館加 co-work 加 coffee shop 嘅一個混合版，係咪 ？Next， 以前嘅建築物左邊係做教堂啦，中間係 printing press， 右邊係 Wikipedia。以前嘅建築物除咗提供庇護，亦都係傳遞知識。去到18世紀，建築被印刷取代；21世紀，印刷又俾互聯網取代。今時今日建築仲有啲咩作用咧？公共建築首先佢一個 public representative 佢係有一個知識儲存、知識生產嘅用途，係咪啊？所以我哋問點樣嘅建築物能夠誘發好奇心、發散思維、促進交流咧？未來嘅建築 next 點樣做到寧靜而真實咧？咁希望呢個係建築嘅4個趨勢，個人認為。Thank you。
我呢個真係一個9秒9嘅 presentation 係咪？即係我其實我係咪你細個嘅時候你咪3歲就開始念吉口令啊？係咪？Thank you. That was wow. What a great presentation. Thank you very much. So yeah, you actually saved us some time. So next up is Eric. Eric just now Yime's already kind of mentioned that he's going to pick up some of the ideas that Yime has talked about, and also from Eric's a co-founder of a company called Architecture Commons. So the other half is also here, so Eric, mic's yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for the invitation. So I'm Eric, founder of Architecture Commons. My partner Rick is also in the audience. So today, I sort of have 2 roles. One is to talk about the territory of practice and how we have been rethinking that. And also as my role at AIA's Young Architect Groups Chair. So I will be sort of looking at how we as emerging practices, how do we actually shape the agency of architects and how do we start those conversations? So it's really hard to follow such a brilliant presentation. So I will try my best. So we at Architecture Commons, we also started something called Neighbor Innovation Lab in 2019. So why do we do that? So most of our work are obviously built works, architecture, interiors, working with commercial schools and nonprofit. Our sort of mission is around sort of community and around how do we sort of build equitable society. And because of that, we started something called process innovation to look at strategy, to look at how we can extend architecture into the process and working with also some of the similar players, government, semi-government agencies. I'm doing the Manfred thing. So obviously we do build works, and then we also, we also sort of look into sort of working with communities, working with stakeholders, trying to understand sort of data points of what people are saying about our neighborhoods and how we use neighborhood as a unit of sort of innovation. We use neighborhood as sort of a unit to look at how we can create systemic change through sort of working with governments, property owners, industrial leaders, community. We want to sort of create a multi-site platform because people don't talk to each other. They're always in silo. How do we break those silos? How do we as architects become those catalysts for transformation? So we, I call myself an architect and also a design strategist. So how do we look at innovation in the middle of neighbors, service designs, and government and corporations? How do we create topics that can cut into sort of these, some of these very sort of sticky issues? A lot of times we look at public spaces, we look at sort of heritage and culture, and today's time is limited, so I'll try to flip through a lot of our slides, but we look at it through a few different topics. We call them commons. We're very interested in the sort of the, how do we sort of look at commons around different sort of stakeholders. We create toolkits and guidelines. We create new ways to look at information through digital platforms and the old research and feasibility studies. So comments. We flipping through some of these slides. We have been working in Wan Chai, looking at working with a lot of different stakeholders, looking at how we can look at public space in a different way. District council, corporations, art center. So looking at businesses, looking at neighbors, creating sort of a very bottom-up approach of actually just going down into the street and asking them. So we started that in 2019, and that's how we actually, standing in the street, listening to people, get to know some of our district councilors and sort of stakeholders in the neighborhood. Similar approach in Chunwan, working with a developer and looking, sort of trying to look at the methodology, sort of how do we replicate the same methodology, but obviously with very local changes, creating digital tools of mapping and working also with different technology, like I discovered this is through their work, creating toolkits and guidelines. This is working with also with Sarah's team, looking at how do we look at public space, working with Architectural Services Department, listening to a lot of stakeholders' opinion, doing interviews, workshops, symposiums, creating contents where we can then sort of spread the methodology using toolkits. This is the design thinking toolkit that we're going to be introducing to ArchiSD and hopefully through them to design practitioners. And also digital platform. We're very, very interested in looking at how do we sort of minimize the effort of sort of talking to communities, but also maximizing sort of the human impact. Like how do we actually understand each data as a person? How do we represent them as graphics? How do we represent them as sculptures? How do we experience their personas? And so you would also do the survey to understand who you are in a neighborhood. So lastly, how do we rethink the agency of architects in Hong Kong and beyond? So we have been asking that question ourselves, throughout the last couple of years, and we would love to extend that dialogue together with other emerging architects in different regions. We started that with New York a few months back, and it was a very, very, I would say very, very enlightening sort of experience, because hearing how emerging practices around the world are doing that, we have one voice and we have one perspective. How do we look at Korea, Southeast Asia, GBA? Korea is super interesting because of the sort of very, very rich historical culture and sort of the need of imagery, and that two things clashing creates a very interesting thing. Southeast Asia, you may already mention, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. And also with a lot of very experienced people in GBA, how do we extend that knowledge through just talking about it, right? Let's talk about it first. Let's hear about the experiences. Then the other element is, I haven't thrown Arab up there where Dennis is, but I think working with big practices, talking about that global and local perspective. We are local here, but we are global to someone else, right? So how do we work with these global organizations and global practices together? How do we share resources? How do we look at research insights, engagement, manpower, diversity, innovation, and scale together? I think that's the question I would love to sort of explore more in the next year with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I become an AIA member? Sorry. Thank you. So we've got our next speaker, Wei Tang. Wei Tang is also, an RIBA member as well. So he will fly the British, right? No, he's also he's also an exhibitor. So so you will be able to if you go to the annex, you will see his exhibit, which also works with an artist. So it's kind of beyond territories in his kind of even in his sort of a manifestation in the exhibit. So. Thank you very much, Wei. So I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Let me introduce myself. My name is Wei Tang. I'm a founding partner of Quad Studio. And yeah, that's that. This is Quad Studio. We established this in 2017, and this year we are our 5th anniversary. So we're very, very happy with that. And beyond that, I want to talk about something else first. I'll talk about collective polymorph. That is what we're all about. It's about going from 0 to 1. And I don't mean individually. We're looking at collaboration as a team. So as a team, we actually come together, and it's almost like standby, and it's almost like coming together as a power to work together to create something. So it's almost like being in the Renaissance, where artists are everything from engineers to sculptors and everything. I think architects could be the same. So that's why we created Quad as a platform for creativity. So here we started with 3 partners, but we actually created different designers with a different edge. So each of these edges will actually create their own kind of a team. And from that team, we wanted to create a different kind of genre of different types of design. So this is where we come from. So it's almost like a polymorph, kind of a DNA kind of thing, which actually we do art, architecture, landscape, urban design, interior design, and product design. And with that, we actually create a co-genre of different designs, from art to architecture to urban design, all types. And also with that, we look at the idea of actually collaboration. I believe this is the major thing, collaborating with great artists, engineers, all kind of environmental designers, botanists, is all about. So inside, it's a different kind of a way of looking at Renaissance. It's almost like a Vitruvian man, a group of individuals with wide knowledge engaged with social interaction. So here, I want to start to talk about collaboration. This is Ross Lovegrove, a really cool product designer. And we work with him on a design for a sculpture for a main entrance. And this is using very kind of innovative design, designed by a robot. So the whole thing is designed by robots. And then we can put it in the entrance, and it's very new and innovative. And this is Patrick Blanc, somebody that we worked with as well. He's a botanist. And we created this kind of a landscape indoor. And so how can landscape be indoor? It's like, it depends on the species. So he goes into Amazon and finds all these different species that can be put indoor. And this is his elevation. So he's designing all the different species on the elevation. And then we use this elevation to create the sculpture. So this kind of landscape sculpture was created by his creative ideas, which is very interesting. And it's still growing, and it's incredible. It's like an indoor space, and it's growing like outdoor. It's incredible. Also, we worked with UFO from China, and this is like a digital media. This is still work in progress. This is something that we're doing at the moment in Shenzhen. So basically, it's a media wall. So we did the architecture design interior, and then they would do the content, and we will show you more of that later. So I'll come back to our event. We collaborated with Dimension Plus, and basically we created a booth. You can actually visit and annex. And what we did is actually create this kind of a digital media. We had kind of a digitized Hong Kong, both urban and natural landscape. So the whole thing you can see when you go into the booth, the whole kind of digital perspective of Hong Kong, which is quite interesting. I'd like to show you some of our projects as well. This is an interesting project that we've actually designed recently. And it's like we do architecture as well. So this is something that we're quite proud of during our 5 years in the making. I think this is a very interesting jigsaw in the middle of Pingwu, and there's a future kind of TOD there as well. So that's one thing. This is another thing that we want to talk about is Megalopolis X, which is a super HQ. We collaborated with MBA and Atelier 10. One is a traffic engineer, and one is an environmental engineer. And the only way we can actually get this done, basically, was to collaborate with them. And we were quite fortunate because we were the only Hong Kong team to be shortlisted from all the big firms such as MDRDV, Eric Morales, Nick Sakai, Helen Lawson. So we're quite fortunate for that. And we actually created this very interesting city. And it's not just a normal city. We look at ideas of environmentally. We look at the ideas of using rubbish to actually gasify, to do district cooling. As well as that, we look at the ideas of how the future kind of connectivity in terms of rail and different kinds of networks will happen. So the whole thing kind of look at what would a future city will look like. So this is quite interesting in terms of developments, in terms of that design. This is a quite interesting thing as well. This is in Beijing. And we're sorry, we're almost ending, right? This is something that I want to talk about. It's basically, we do a lot of things in China. And my aspirations is basically, can we do the same in Hong Kong? Because currently, what we have is like in China, we are considered as international architects, and we can actually collaborate with LDI. In Hong Kong, of course, you have international architects, but we're not. We're not. We are local architects. So can local design architects be able to do what we do in China and contribute to society, this Hong Kong society? Thank you.
That's a great question to end on. Thank you very much, Wei. And yes, please go and see his exhibit. It's great. I like it. Anyway, final speaker today, we have Sarah. Sarah from One Byte, one half of One Byte, co-founder of design and director of One Byte Design Studio. I think your name has already been name dropped already by somebody else today, so there's not, I don't need to introduce anymore. So Sarah is going to talk a little bit about what they do and her interpretation of beyond territories. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And thank you for the invitation, because finally the M3 is homecoming. And so I look forward to look at the exhibition myself. And so for tonight, I can't speak too fast. So, but I'm so impressed and also inspired by what the other speakers has talked about. And I hope that maybe my part is more to give you another aspect, or I would say different scale of those work could be. Yeah, because from N3, when you talk about the topics of beyond territories, I actually just want to throw some question, I would say. Maybe you can help me to press. Yes. And I always want to ask, or I've been asking myself in the past 3 years. So, hey, we're architects. So what's now and beyond? What do we actually want to achieve? And what's our goal? Because in COVID, what have we done? Have we tried to do something when we are facing this global and also local social issue? And on the other hand, when we talk about housing, what have we done? What have we changed in the system? And when we talk about extreme weather, what have we chipped in? What have we started to talk about? And when we talk about food crisis, do we have a role in it, on what we could actually do about it? And so when I thought about what I should talk about today, I would want to talk about, or wanted to share about my thoughts on COVID actually gave us the need and urgency for something different. So that could be for urban innovation that Iris talked about. It could be for a people-centered perspective. And I think more importantly, it's about the systemic change, because that's what connected everyone beyond the territories to work towards the same goal in something. And that's, I guess, what One Byte has been trying to do, to just contribute some of our effort, because all our works are talking about how we could actually interconnect people and make places. So among our 4 teams, we always think about how we can use an urban scale to actually start something from a human and also social scale. So what could this be? We have been working on this community recycling centers or hubs across the cities. So I always want to know about, okay, if we talk about recycling habit, what is the action we can take? We could change one shop, but at the same time, the scalability actually inspires me, because now from one shop, it's now 32 across all districts, and it's actually growing. So it's the way how we change habit. So that's the action of a catalyst. And on the other hand, looking at other spaces that we may have abandoned it for a while, and the clicker doesn't work. Okay, so this is it. So it's actually about rooftops. Rooftops are not something we could see at eye level, not on the ground floor, but at the same time, we have 200 million square feet of rooftop spaces around us in the city from housing estates. And so from the first one that we did, and now we have done 7. And so we also look at how it could become a new topology that we actually just bringing some daily delight for everyone for a healthier action to happen. And also we think about neighborhood catalyst. When we talk about different neighborhood, which we wouldn't be talking about a lot of things, we could be engaging a lot of people. So what we have done or what we could help to change. And so this is a very small program, but which was my favorite one from last year, is called the Plant Library. We actually bring plants to people, become the media to talk, for people to adopt. And also we can actually change our ground floor spaces. And, oh, hello. Okay, sorry. Okay, and then, and also think about what is socially we can do. I think that's the heart of One Bite's work. So in the COVID or in the pandemic, we actually work with different angels to design this eco-friendly mask holder, which actually supports the people who got unemployed during the COVID. It's actually very small. We only sold about 7,000 pieces, but it's actually helping some families for a certain period of time. And lastly, I really hope that, I think everyone is looking at urban data. And one thing what we are trying to do is that combining with the people-centered approach, data actually help us to ask questions. It's actually a way that we can tell story differently to understand what we could ask so that the real change may happen sometimes later. Yeah, and so, yeah, I need your help. So I actually always wonder when we talk about territories, do architects or architecture needs a territory? But how we can actually work as a profession, also being as a team and also a collaboration. Yeah, so I think this is the end of my sharing, just some food for thoughts for our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, One Bite, they also have an exhibit in the annex, so you can also go and see it. And so thank you. It's time for furniture rearrangement. So we will have the discussion panel. So once again, Joyce will join us and the 4 speakers to start off with some questions. We have about 15 people joined online as well. And if you are online, and we will give you first refusal for questions after the discussion panel. So if you have any questions, please send it in, and our team will collect them and pass them on to me. So thank you. So the mic's yours, Joyce.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers in session 2. Again, welcome any new joiners online or in person here. Very exciting to tackle this topic of aspirations of architects in Hong Kong for the generations to come. And first of all, I must switch my Nikon to Cantonese just to say, 樂勤，我真係好佩服你講嘢講得咁快，我都可以哎呀話係曾經係做過香港聖經朗誦比賽嘅冠軍，但係都冇你講得咬字咁清楚咯，所以真係要偷下師啦。可能第時候 pitching 咧都有用咯，即係呢啲急口令嘅技能，正，真係值得表揚，我覺得。但係其實喺你嘅急口令當中咧，其實我都係要尋找翻其實你個意願係咩咧
I can speak in English.
Yeah, I know, but that was just so great. Yeah. So movable chairs. Could you expand a little bit more about that?
You know, when I was doing my exchange in Paris, I was so impressed by Jardin de Luxembourg, where they have the Luxembourg chairs that you can always move around. It was something I've never seen before. And I was so impressed by it. And I think, you know, sometimes when we're talking about social design, we're talking about how we're going to empower the citizens, the end users. And it was the day I was there, and I was like, oh, wow, that's something that is very much empowering, because I can choose my angles, I can choose who I'm going to sit with, I'm going to see what I can see. And I think it's also something very phenomenological. You know, a chair is a blessing for everyone to see it in the public space. And I think that was fascinating. I remember in a way when I was doing my drawing, the construction manual for the Lanto Commune, I remember I draw a lot of chairs. And my professor asked me, why are there so many chairs? And that was the exact questions I like people to ask. Like, imagine you see a scenery, there's so many chairs, they're arranged in different formats. Some of them are in circles, some of them are sitting behind. I think it invites question. Whenever there's an urban scene that invites questions that triggers your curiosity, that would be a successful piece, even in terms of art and architecture.
Absolutely, but it's the concept of the seat that I find very interesting, right? It denotes identity, it denotes status. A king sits on a throne, a teacher sits in a chair, a student stands up. And the type of chair it might be, the ones in Jardin du Luxembourg are, you know, not that comfortable, actually. I mean, they're great for all weather outdoors, but they don't have armrests and they don't have the swivelability of Dai Pai Dong, Guri Gao Dang that you would find in Hong Kong. So I would challenge you to say that actually there are movable chairs in Hong Kong as well, but just not as beautified in that public space in Paris. And perhaps it's charged with that special sheen of luxury because that particular garden is so associated with, say, Paris Fashion Week and the good-looking people of the world. So, you know, have we overlooked the movable chair situation in Hong Kong?
I have no idea because, you know, whenever I propose to have movable chairs, so my clients, they just reject it because there's a maintenance problem, and etc. I don't even have one project that I can propose to have movable chairs. Are we romanticizing it? Well, I'm actually trying to tweak the question a little bit. I guess because you mentioned about the armrest and whether it's outdoor, indoor, I guess it is ultimately about how much we standardize and how much we provide the freedom or change. It's also the same for prefabrication or for MIC or whatsoever. Like to what extent do you want a chair to be fulfilling or to responding to a particular situation versus it is a generic thing that you laid it down all the way around down to Luxembourg and maybe it is uncomfortable. You know, what is being standardized? To what extent is standardized and to what extent is changing? That's a question for architects.
Great, thank you, Lok-Kan. And also moving on to Eric here. You mentioned several cities in which you're interested in and have project ideas in. And specifically, you mentioned Korea being sort of ahead of the game somewhat. So what's the interest in the word interesting there? And not so specifically about Korea itself, but it's about that energy, something that kind of piqued your interest. And how can we lasso that back into Hong Kong? You know, how can Hong Kong get its mojo back in the same way we are actually viewing Korea?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Hong Kong in the past years, we've sort of been kind of going back and forth and rethinking our identity, while others are like sort of charging for it, you know, in doing what they want to do. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's what's unique about Hong Kong and unique about people in Hong Kong. I mean, I think we have been questioning our identity since, you know, the beginning of times, and that's not a new thing for Hong Kongers. And I think, but how do we sort of move beyond that, like questioning our identity, you know, sort of defining our identity or non-defining our identity, whatever it is. Like, I think we need to sort of start talking about that. We need to start sort of creating, you know, art and creating sort of design around that. And I think we have been doing that, but I think we haven't been doing that in sort of the world stage. I think that's what Korea is different, is the designers are going over the world doing, you know, different interesting things. They are looking at, you know, the Korean sort of historic culture in a new way, reinventing it. And then, you know, sort of doing fusions. And, you know, I think one of the designers that I met in Korea is actually doing a spa in China, but with a Korean traditional medicine sort of take on it, which is like, to me, it's like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, they let you do that in China, you know, using a Korean culture. And so I think that's what Korea has made themselves, you know, with the industries, with, you know, you can say a lot of things about their big corporations, their government, their corporations, their young designers, their, you know, middle designers, they're all sort of aligned. And I think that's what we're really missing here in Hong Kong, is we really don't have that spirit. Like everyone's sort of doing their own thing. And
which is what these panels are for.
right. So this is a great start. And thank you for, you know, organizing this.
Yeah. So thank you, Eric. And what struck me from your mini presentation was actually that Venn diagram that showed, I believe, neighbors, design services, and property developer / you know, government support. And it was striking to me because you sometimes wonder how big of a circle the neighbors really are. You know, the concept of plucky neighbors speaking up for themselves has existed as long as time. And where do the Kaifeng associations stand now? You know, are you relying on just passerbys for your data points? And do people want to be considered data points?
So no, I think that's a very, very, very interesting thing that we are sort of investigating and we are sort of studying, because, you know, well, our company is called Architecture Commons. So obviously we're very interested from the get-go of what commons means in this world. We had this whole discussion in CUHK because we're teaching a studio about commons this year. And what are we doing with the commons? You know, are we trying to equate the power dynamics? Are we trying to bring the people that may not usually have the voice to kind of cultivate that voice because they're not used to that muscle? Like, I think one of the first experiment that, well, we want to call it experiments because we are sort of, because we're architects doing non-architecture things. So we're like, oh, we don't know how to do it. So when we go down to the street and sort of ask people, we're like, do people actually want to talk to us? Like, that's basically sort of the gist of your question. And the answer was they actually are very interested to talk to us, even though they're a little bit sort of reluctant at the beginning because they're like, oh, who are you? Are you the government? Are you the, well, probably not the government because government wouldn't do that, but are you the district councillor? Are you, you know, who are you? And I think when we say we are architects that are interested in the neighborhood, and they sort of, you know, I'm sure Sarah also has sort of have a lot of this experience. I think the guard sort of comes down a little bit, like, not a lot, but a little bit. And I think that is sort of a little bit of a vote of confidence. Is like, oh, okay, well, can architects really become that mediator? Can we become that sort of connector between very sort of siloed and very sort of sometimes conflicted sort of groups and conflicted sort of voices, especially you know, in 2019. So I think that's where we are like, okay, well, let's methodologically think about, you know, how do we actually then from the neighbors who are the stakeholders, the NGOs, well, at that time, the district council, you know, and then also government departments, you know, are there different ways that we can sort of kind of round the different voices around similar topics?
Thanks, Eric. And while we are thinking about community and community spirit, that segues quite well actually into what Sarah was presenting about with regards to need and urgency. And that phrase really stuck with me because while we're not sort of frontline healthcare workers necessarily, there is always a need and urgency in communities that spring up sort of unexpectedly. And sort of my takeaway from what Sarah had to say is that it would be rather sad if all we did was lurch from one crisis to another, because that forces us into a position of being quite passive. So we're always there to remedy something that's already gone wrong. But what if the architectural community could be there as sort of in a preventative way, sort of before something bad happens, you already have the solution. So that touches upon session one of what Ime had to say about, you know, big data. Are we better at forecasting with that information we have now, which is privileged information? Can we be already planning 30 years ahead? You know, we are already at 2030, basically. And I suppose what my question for Sarah really is right now is, in terms of need and urgency, do the neighbors know that they need you? You know, 啲街坊知唔知你喺度先? Do they know that you're serving them? And that project you mentioned about the recycling posts, I've seen the success of that. You know, even though recycling is not necessarily taught in schools, the fact that that shop exists in their community on the ground floor where they don't have to walk down to the basement means that they are sorting their household items in a more considered, conscious way. So what other things could we be filling our communities with besides a recycling point, Sarah?
I think that's what I've been thinking most of the days. But it's interesting that, for example, when we bring the plant library to Sampokong neighbors, and we actually ask them about, okay, so we try to link plants with sustainability. So plants is more tangible in a way. So when we try to talk about something wider, like, oh, so do you think you would prefer more sustainable lifestyle? And saying they would tell you, huh, sustainability? What is that? I think there's still a gap between how we see our profession or this professional terms with daily habits or daily happenings. So like recycling, why it's successful? Because it's something becoming a habit. It's something that we could do every day. But there are a lot of other things that we keep as architects or even urban designers, we keep envisioning, but people are not walking towards that yet because they couldn't see it. For example, when we talk about walkable city, for a lot of them, they don't think walk is important. And that's why in the M3 exhibition, our exhibit is about happy walk machine, is that we try to bring the gap of this, not as a jargon, but just our dream, how to bring our dream city back to the people's level of understanding. So can you walk? Have you tried walk happily? So that's a much more approachable question for people to think. And I think from the exhibitions in China, we actually received this feedback. Someone left messages on our IG saying that they really love this because they have never thought about Google could bring you to a destination, but he could never show you the happier walk. And I think that's how we can actually twist the mindset and help people or neighbors to understand that's what you need. So definitely from health, from when we talk about, I think when Eric's studios in Chinese U was talking about commons, that was so important because for me, common is like a safety net. It's how we actually co-create a safety net in the neighborhood and gradually help people to understand what's the urgency here. Because, and I always feel that all actions that we are taking, it's not an end game yet. We know something's happening. So why don't we grab a time or chances to experiment them so that when that crisis come again or something happens, we know what we can do. So we are not that reactive. I think we have been reactive for years. So can we start being proactive even from this daily scale of living? Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. And so White, how are you helping to change habits? Putting you right on the spot there. But no, you gave a fabulous sort of mini presentation about the work that your studio does, which is very, very applaudable. And of course, there is that, you know, stickling issue about, you know, the labeling of whether or not one is an international architect and therefore privy to certain sort of partnerships and that. And that I suppose we will leave to, you know, government powers that may be, but on a sort of closer to the ground level, what sort of projects might your studio be doing to help, you know, change the habits and the daily lives of others?
Well, we try to collaborate with a lot of different designers or engineers to actually look at the different ways to actually make the life better. Recently, we've been working with Atelier 10, and we're looking at how, in terms of, you know, how cities are getting bigger and bigger, and more people are living in the cities nowadays than anywhere else. And what's happening in China? It's like there's more rubbish in China, twice as much rubbish as the US by 2030. And what can we do with it? And we devised an idea of why don't we gasify it? By gasifying it, you can actually use the energy to create turbines to actually do a lot of things, such as district cooling. as well as that all kind of urban lighting can be done with that as well. So it's doing something with the rubbish. So that was quite fascinating with me. And from that, we looked at ideas of how to actually implement that into society. And we looked at it, can it be done? And the answer is yes. Gardens by the Bay in Singapore is actually doing this at this very moment. They're gasifying rubbish to create electricity to power their biomes, which is incredible. I think it's something that we can look at for the future.
That sounds amazing. And sort of linking between the earlier session 1, and with our session here, you know, a guiding principle of what was mentioned was build less, but build better.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the functional arm of ideas taking shape. But I think none of us should self-edit so much that we think small necessarily. So perhaps the reminder to future architects is really to keep thinking big and to keep it big, maybe. But does this necessarily manifest itself in terms of build, build, build? That's the question. You know, in what's referenced constantly in textbooks is the post-war boom years. And by that, we mean post-Second World War. So my question to all the panelists here is, so what's our boom factor? What's the boom for 2022? Just to say we survived COVID might not be enough. So what's kind of the next thing that's kind of turning the wheels for you, that's really keeping you up at night? Lokan? Sorry to break into your dreaming.
Why am I the first one to answer? I don't know. I always think it is like it's always progressive. The world is moving forward and it's iterative. That means at some point we are doing a circles, but every time we do a circle, it's always like a loop and then we're moving forward. Digitalization is really something a boom. I mean, some of our friends would have gone into UI UX design and they earn a lot of money, even more than me. But in a way, you know, if we romanticize to say that digital is going to replace the physical, and so that we don't need architecture or we don't need something big, everything. So it would be, you know, sort of an overstatement to say it is going to architecture will be completely gone and everything is going to be small. I think it will be a process. It will be a process. But I agree, like in general, it will be shrinking down in a way. But also think about that in the future, we're also going to the moon and we're going to the Mars.
I want to go to Jupiter.
Yeah, you want to go to Jupiter. So you know, well, aerospace engineering will be another trend. It would be fun to think about like what's our relationship with something out there in the space.
Great.
Right.
Thank you, Lokan. Eric?
Sure. I think, I mean, talking about the role of architects too, I think we in the past has always been way too passive. Like we've always been receiving, you know, briefs from our clients and sort of addressing the brief. Like, I think the opportunity here is we, you know, like Lokan is saying, you know, we can be the UX designers, we can be the UI designers, we can be the data analysts. You know, I think we really need to look broader and sort of ask the questions and also kind of advise our clients. Instead of clients telling us what to do, we should tell them what they should do. And I think that's where obviously the aspiration comes from. But I think that's not impossible. You know, I mean, looking at, you know, well, Gensler, I mean, they have their strategy team, you know, started 20 years ago, right? Like, you know, they are advisory. They are doing advisory services 20 years back. So, you know, how can we, you know, so that's not new. Like, you know, how can we sort of look at the data? How can we understand our users, understand our stakeholders, and go back, advise our clients come to us for advice of how do we build? Do we not build? What do we build? So I think that's where the opportunity is. And I think that sort of process and thinking about the methodology, you know, would aid us to build or not build anywhere, physical, non-physical. I think the talk about digital, non-digital, it's going to be hybrid. Come on, we're physical. Like, unless we're machines, you know, we will be all in the digital world. It's going to be hybrid. Hybrid is the next thing. So, you know, how do we create that hybrid environment, leveraging both digital and physical? We're architects, so I think we're in a very good position to kind of be that sort of mediator between the digital and the physical as well.
Great, thanks, Eric. And yeah, Awai.
Yeah, For me, I think these COVID years has actually made us rethink, because we can always go in the wrong direction, because, okay, cities are getting denser and denser, and all we can do is just create smaller and smaller units. But in COVID, it's like, yeah, we just found out that we have to work at home, and we don't have an office there. And what we do, we have to make shift. We have to get rid of a room to make an office. So if we can actually think about it in the future, maybe we don't need to squeeze to the point where we can only just go home and sleep. We need to look at the idea of how we can actually live in this society and how we move forward. And maybe we don't need to go so tight in terms of the building environment to actually move forward and rethink this.
And I see Sarah.
I think mobility is definitely one thing, but as I'm not sure if I should call that a boom, but because it's more negative, is about the mental health crisis, I would say, because I guess from yesterday, everyone look at the news saying that, okay, let's drop the live home safe scan, and then every one of us should be next. But at the same time, it actually showed how stress and what we have built up over the past few years. And so the effect is actually surfacing. So how we think about how we can design for that and not being passive anymore.
As I mentioned, not to be so passive or reactive. It's really kind of being ahead of the curve, and besides relief, having something that will drum up excitement, I think, in the near term. Roger, what do you think?
Well, I think just going back to a couple of things that they've just said, Okan's point about building, or the point about building beyond Earth. I mean, funny enough, there is an exhibit which again in Annex talk about building in Mars. And in fact, when we were in New York, we did have a speaker who were talking about, no, he was not just talking about, he was working with NASA to build in Mars. And he was actually then using the technology to start building in eco tourism places in the Amazons or something like that. So actually, the idea of actually going beyond our territories to come back, just go past the boundary and then come back, actually is quite an interesting exercise. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that well, I know what you mean by telling the client what to do, but actually just through this discussion, I realized that we as architects is a good agency to tell the client what people want. Not what we want them, not architects want them to do, but we are as a good agency to gather all the kind of opinions, neighborhoods, Gaifeng or whatever. We train to work with dozens of people on each project who have pulling in different directions. So I think our training is actually put us in a very good position to do that. Talking about training, it's kind of good to hear that you guys are teaching, because I mean, those in the old days, you probably would have to have built 50 projects before you can actually teach at university. But these days, you're not really teaching about how to, well, I'll probably get shot down when I say that. You're not really kind of teaching how to build. I mean, the idea, I'm going to get shot down for this as well. I mean, the idea of the architect being a protected species, the name, you kind of, well, all of us can do what you're doing without being an architect, right? So what is that? I mean, is there a qualification for that? I mean, what do we call it? I mean, the Vitruvius man, the new Vitruvius man? I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there an institute that will give you that qualification, that accredits you are a new Vitruvius man? And what quality do we have? I mean, do you need to know geography? Do you need to know kind of, doing business across the world? And I think that's an interesting point, because we're at the point, the boom for me is it really is going beyond boundary in the sense, well, the idea of actually having to, I mean, the other day I was in our IBA event where they have just awarded part 3 to students in Hong Kong. I mean, that's oh God, I get shot down again. It's a ridiculous thing to learn about how to build in the UK when you're in Hong Kong and get qualification from the UK. And you spend all your time probably working in Hong Kong. I don't know. I mean, I think we need to really break out of a boundary, break out of our territories in order to come back to really reassess what we really, I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn about the local regulations in Hong Kong. It's great, you do that. But I think all of us go beyond that I mean, all of the speakers in all four, to both sessions. And if we go beyond that, whose door do we knock on to give us our whatever title we have?
And doesn't this speak directly to sort of need and urgency, which has been mentioned in this panel? And, what Roger's touched on is the labeling and how that can sometimes kind of confine us and kind of draw us back, when actually perhaps there should be, from an architect's perspective, some sort of petition going on to really get critical thinking taught at schools at a younger age. I mean, it is really humorous, I think, that the most favored professions, at least in Hong Kong, from a professional standpoint, legal, medical, architectural, are not actually offered like at secondary school level. Well, how would you know what you're going to spend your next 40 years of your life devoted to if it's not labeled that way when you're actually learning it and absorbing things like a sponge? And it doesn't have to be called Architecture 101, because, what you workshop in the first few sessions of when receiving a brief are probably nothing to do with sort of blueprints anyways. It's talking about an idea. And that's maybe what kids need, or what people need, so that we get the wheels moving sooner, so that we don't find ourselves mid-career before we come to a realization that what we're grappling with is not necessarily a professional qualification, but a mode of thinking. So in order to get more people on board to speak the same language, literally think in the same mode of thought, is this something that, is the education part now the most urgent thing in the urgent business side of things? Are architects speaking to educators closely enough? Is the Education Bureau speaking to the Architectural Services Department closely enough? I mean, these are the questions, aren't they?
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
You just touched on something that I wanted to talk about.
Da Vinci finger.
Yeah. Do we have an identity? That's the thing. Because us designers, in China, we are international architects. But in Hong Kong, we are local, but we're not AP. We don't have an identity. The whole kind of government list, band 1, band 2, is all about being an AP and being built projects. And there is an identity for us designers. That's what I want to say, because I think we need to educate people to give us a platform to actually, for us to contribute to Hong Kong society. But at the moment, we don't have this. Who are we?
Yeah, let's set up the Institute for the New Vitruvius Man, shall we?
Yeah, I think it's sort of the different modes of thinking, right? Like, I think in the past, it's about profession is about the protectionism of, rigor and, maybe secret knowledge and whatever it is. And I think now we're in an age where, all the things can be overlapped. We can cross over professions so easily because a lot of things are accessible. So, I mean, look at Elon Musk, right? Like, he's crossing industry, crossing, everything, all at once, and bringing sort of parallel knowledge into whole new industry and disrupting the whole industry because of breaking those boundaries, right? So I think that the conversation about architects, not architects, is also kind of, I wouldn't say outdated, but like, I think everyone should be thinking across the different professions. Everyone should be cross-disciplinary. And of course, we as architects carry sort of the profession and the sort of the bring out the ideas tea again, like the deep expertise. But I think we should all be sort of looking at the lateral and working with everyone to become the Vitruvius organization, man, woman thing, and everyone overlapping. And yes, and so I think that's that's the sort of opportunity that we have, is how do we work with other industries? How do we work with, like I think Dennis was saying, Arab obviously has a, very advantageous position to work disciplinary within the team. And so how do we do that outside of our own, small firms? And, how do we sort of work with all these different amazing sort of collaborators? And I think there's a way to do it. And I think, it's sort of the process of figuring how and where the alignment is with these different teams.
Thank you, Eric. And I would just like to close this panel by saying that I hope with all 4 amazing speakers today, we remind ourselves of the generosity of spirit and what learning from different industries and different voices can add to our own practice and thought process. And I think maybe in generations past, there was always this working up the pyramid and working up the sort of hierarchy to reach a place where you can finally be considered an authoritative voice. I can hear myself and it's very meta. That's a signal. But that obsession with being the authority, capital letters, is it waning? We don't know. Are we trying to, diminish it? No, not really. But we're just trying to say that there are other people in the field who can also provide value, and value is only valuable when people can see it. And so those voices need to be heard, and let's just hope that that sort of platform of exchange continues. So thank you all very much for attending these 2 sessions at Asia Society today. It has been a pleasure to speak to all 4 speakers, and I hope you stick around and see the exhibition in the gallery. Otherwise, join me for drinks downstairs.
Yeah, well, join us for drinks downstairs at Emo. And well, this is the first dialogue session. So the second dialogue session by Stanley Siu would be on the 21st of, sorry, I'm just part of the ArchiDec 十二越界 program. The next dialogue session will be on the 21st of December. And then the next one following that will be the 28th, will be hosted by Bernard. And in between, there are other programs like Architects Tour, as well as exhibitors sharing. Exhibitors have been invited to tell us about how they, about their exhibits and so on. So please look out on our social media for ArchiDec events, and I hope to see you again there. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We need a group photo.